It's not just central bank digital currencies. There's also the issue of private bank digital currencies, which are also just as surveillable and seizable and programmable as CBDCs would be. They're just in the hands of private banks. And do you think JP Morgan would behave any better than the Federal Reserve when JP Morgan is one of the biggest, controllers of the Federal Reserve? I mean, honestly, it's kind of a false dichotomy at the end of the day. There's several groups that are behind it. A lot of it ultimately goes back, if you look at some of these entities that start the digital ID push under the auspices of the United Nations, like the ID 2020 Alliance, which has now been folded into another alliance with essentially all of the same funders. But ultimately, ID 2020 was started by groups like Microsoft, the Rockefeller Foundation, Accenture, some of these big multinational corporations, or in the case of the Rockefeller Foundation, the philanthropic arms of oligarchic clans that have tried to create a global system of financial control in private hands for the better part of the last 100 years. And so ultimately, digital ID is meant to sort of facilitate that kind of system globally.
Today we have Whitney Webb, who sounds the alarm on the birth of a new international monetary system with potentially disastrous consequences. But there's a catch. The driving force behind this new system is a terrifying agenda of total surveillance and censorship, engineered to control every aspect of our lives. Whitney's insights are drawn from the plans of global elites. In her recent interview, Whitney warns that governments worldwide are steering us towards this new world order, led by figures like BlackRock's Larry Fink, who seeks to tokenize every asset and commodity on the planet. Whitney breaks down two critical components of this plan: the rise of digital IDs and the tokenization of the natural world.
I don't think it's likely that they're going to sell it as one universal digital ID for everybody. They want it to be vendor agnostic, but have it all have sort of similar standards and have the data all be exportable in the same format. So, maybe you'll have, in the US, for example, 5 or 6 or even 10 different vendors of digital ID. And Japan will have 5 to 10 and what have you. But ultimately, all of that data, whether the US, Japan, or anywhere else in the world, can all be exported in the same format to the same centralized database, which is ultimately the goal, right? And then technically you do have a centralized system of digital ID, but it looks to be decentralized at the superficial layer. And that is also the goal too with the digital currency push, and because it's not just central bank digital currencies. There's also the issue of private bank digital currencies, which are also just as surveillable and seizable and programmable as CBDCs would be. They're just in the hands of private banks. And do you think JP Morgan would behave any better than the Federal Reserve when JP Morgan is one of the biggest, controllers of the Federal Reserve? And what will likely happen is a public-private partnership, the preferred model of all of these groups, UN included. And so I think ultimately that's where this is going to lead us, and they want it to obviously be connected to your online activity. So if you want to use the internet for economic activity, for social activity, or education, or anything else, you will have to have a digital ID and connect it to your ability to get online. And then obviously there's a push to have, turn basically social media giants into banks. There's a big push for this with X, Twitter, and presumably, it was Facebook originally that tried to start the stablecoin Libra Diem project that has since, been turned into, after it was shut down, went to populate USDC, and some of these companies that are working on the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, like David Marcus's Lightspark and some of those things. So there's efforts to revive that and ultimately kind of link it to some sort of gig economy, I guess you could say, based on how much of people's attention you can get on these social media platforms, and what your metrics are in terms of likes and clicks. But are you even dealing with real people? Presumably you would be, right, if everyone has an ID, but that's not necessarily true. And now you have a Pentagon contractor, running Twitter and X, Yeah, ultimately, where I see this going is really where I see the powers that be, how they plan to use AI and what they plan to do to humanity with it.
Whitney has been sounding the alarm on the next crisis, and now we're on the verge of a complete collapse. Billionaires and banking elites have been planning the multi-level catastrophe, and it's not just about surveillance, it's a reshaping of the world's monetary system. This reset will be magnitudes bigger, and governments globally will feel the effects. Larry Fink has been vocal about the plan to transfer and tokenize all currency, another element of financial control. This will have disastrous consequences and is engineered to control all aspects of our lives. The inability to buy or sell with digital IDs is something unfathomable, but a direction world leaders are already implementing. The automation of food and commodities marks the end of our ability to control the very life we now live. And this is a glaring red flag for the days ahead.
What some of the architects of artificial intelligence, at least in the United States, see as what the real promise of AI is and where it will take us and what they anticipate will happen. And so I looked at this book by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger called The Age of AI, Our Human Future. And one of the reasons I did that is because Eric Schmidt was the lead of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. He has styled himself as Kissinger's heir, and ultimately, has basically created the roadmap that the U.S. national security state will use in guiding its implementation of artificial intelligence. So this is someone who's very important to listen to. He's also on the steering committee of Bilderberg, alongside Peter Thiel, the anti-Schmidt, supposedly, but who's definitely on board for all of this stuff as well, despite his slightly different rhetoric and obviously a very different, well-oiled PR machine that makes him appear to be something that he is not. So in that book, basically, and I think this is very revealing, Kissinger and Schmidt essentially say that the real promise of AI, it's not in making life more convenient and all of this stuff that us plebs are told. The real promise is that it will forever alter how humanity perceives and processes reality. And so there's a lot of implications for that. On social media and on the internet in general. And in talking about, the flow of information in AI, they essentially say that the content is going to be produced mostly by AI, and then AI will censor the content as well. So even if you're in this sort of paradigm where you have a digital ID and you're on the internet and you think you're dealing only with real people, you're still going to be essentially living in an AI soup. But the goal is ultimately to have it be about perception management, and ultimately the kind of world they envision is one where people depend on AI to tell them what is real and what is not. And honestly, it makes no sense. It's basically like AI is creating this problem, and so the solution is to essentially put AI in charge of everything and have it be sort of the processor of reality for us. And they also make these other arguments that as humans become more and more dependent on AI, including for perceiving reality, humans will lose the ability to do it themselves and will sort of be in this place where they have to use AI to understand what's going on and become, and that humanity as a consequence will just become so easily manipulated to really unprecedented degrees. They say there's going to be a two-tier society, the top tier being the people who are cognitively enhanced by AI and regulate AI and program it and decide its objective function and what have you. And then there will be the people that AI acts upon, which is, basically the underclass, who know something is happening and basically they're being experimented on, but don't really know what to do about it or how to explain it and whatever. And over time, those are the ones that become, as they say, cognitively diminished. The ante is only going to be upped more and more and more and more, making it more aggressive and really making the risk-benefit analysis of regular people that actually want truth, or actual journalists that don't feel like selling out or praying at the altar of Elon Musk. It's going to be very hard to access or distribute information effectively on that platform, and that we should stop looking at it as the public square, the town square or whatever. It is a war zone. It should be treated as such. We should be off them as much as possible.
Larry Fink has been one of the main proponents of this new tokenized world, saying, "Imagine a world where every asset, every resource and every commodity, whether it's the food you eat, the home you live in, or the very air you breathe, can be digitally represented and traded on a global scale. This is the power of tokenization. Tokenization is not just about creating a digital currency, it's about transforming the very foundation of our financial system. It's about ensuring transparency, security, and efficiency in the movement of value across borders with unprecedented speed and accuracy. But beyond the mechanics of finance, tokenization represents something much larger, a new era of economic opportunity. It will allow us to unlock the value of assets that have traditionally been illiquid, making them accessible to a broader range of investors. Whether it's a piece of art, a plot of land, or even the intellectual property behind an innovative idea, tokenization democratizes ownership. It brings markets closer to the people and creates a more inclusive financial ecosystem. He says the future we are building is one where the lines between the digital and physical worlds blur, where every transaction, every contract, and every agreement is secured on the blockchain, bringing with it a level of trust and accountability that our current systems simply can't match. This isn't just a technological shift, it's a paradigm shift, and those who embrace it will be the ones who lead us into the next chapter of global finance. What do you think about Whitney's prediction for the crisis we're now starting to see unfold? Comment down below.